Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. Today I was going to talk about planetary transits, or Gochara, as they're known as in Sanskrit, for August 2025. This talk is from a Vedic astrologer Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. And it seems like the theme for this month is protecting the lineage. So let's take a look. Note beforehand, the information presented is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. Then you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. If you're new to the channel, just some announcements and a bit of orientation. So audio dubbing is available on this channel in 8 languages. They're listed here. Also, even though this talk is about August, right around the corner, eclipses are coming. So heads up on that. They'll be coming September 7th and 21st. And I'll be getting into depth, as those come closer into focus. But I do, again, just as a kind of preparation, I have 3 videos here that help to navigate the energy of eclipses because they can be tricky. So I have a video, Lunar and Solar Eclipses, Chandra Surya Grahan, as a general background, an auspicious timing or muhurta of eclipses, and then mantras for Rahu, Ketu, and eclipses, so that you have some mantra upayas or mantra remedies to help you out. Okay. All my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject if you'd like to learn more. My channel is all about playlists. So like this type of video on monthly transits is in my Gochara transits playlist. But I have others like bhavas, houses, yogas, planetary combinations, and there are others. If you like to learn astrology by looking at famous birth charts of people, places, and moments in time, I would check out my birth chart archive list 2025 video, where you can get a list of all the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel in the video. You can find them in. So some of the newest videos I've published, if you've missed any, Capricorn constellation or Makara Rashi, also the new moon Amavasya on 24th July 2025, and then the birth chart of Bangkok and Thailand. So we have a national birth chart there and city chart. And then if you're new to all this and want to learn more Vedic astrology, get a good foundation, the videos I've listed at the end of the slide are where I would start so that you can start, getting more into Vedic astrology or get more out of talks like this. So. Okay, so on this slide, we've got dates when things are moving around in the sky. August 2nd, Sun enters Ashwini nakshatra. August 8th, Mercury leaves combustion or asta, and Mars and Saturn have an exact mutual aspect. Then August 9th, there's a full moon in Capricorn or Makara and Shravana. August 11th, Mercury goes progressive, and then Venus and Jupiter enter planetary war or graha yuddha. August 12th, Venus and Jupiter also enter Punarvasu nakshatra. Then August 13th, Mars enters Hasta nakshatra. 16th of August, Sun enters Leo or Simha, and also Maga nakshatra. Then August 20th, Venus enters Cancer or Karaka. 21st of August, Mercury enters Ashwini nakshatra. August 23rd, there's a new moon in Leo, again in Maga. And then Venus enters Pusha nakshatra. And then August 30th, Sun enters Purva Falguni nakshatra, and Mercury enters Leo or Simha Maga. Okay, so those are the dates. Let's talk about what all this means. Okay, so on this slide, what we have is how the sky is shifting over the course of the month. So on the left side, we have the sky pattern on August 1st, and on the right side, we have the sky pattern on August 31st. Both of these charts are oriented to 1 degree of Aries, okay? The reason why is when you have Aries or Mesha in Sanskrit, which is the first constellation of the zodiac in the first house, what that does is it creates what's called a natural zodiac, which is essentially a birth chart for the whole world or all of humanity. So basically what we're talking about here is collective energy. Okay? And we compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges, that sort of thing. Okay. So on the left side, the time here, is not so important, but it's 23:06 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time or New York time. That's the time zone I live in. And then August 31st is 21:09 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in New York as well. Okay. Again, both oriented to 1 degree of Aries. So Aries rising or Mesha Lugna. Lugna means rising sign, ascendant, first house, all different names of the same thing. Okay, so on the left chart, the moon nakshatra. A nakshatra is a lunar mansion. If you're not familiar, there are about 27 lunar mansions, and every night the moon passes through a different one, and they all have different energies associated with them. Okay. So moon here is in Vishaka nakshatra. Vishaka is a victory, but victory at all costs. So it can be a little bit hardcore or have an edge to it. And then the dasha period or planetary period. And the dasha period or planetary period is when different planets are kind of more active or influential in a chart. Well, it's Jupiter, Saturn, K2, Sun. Okay. So Jupiter here, where are we seeing these line up? Well, we're seeing Jupiter and Saturn, basically in the ninth house of authority, government, religion, spirituality, and the 12th house of losses and expenditures. Okay. And to get to the different houses, so we have Aries at the top, that top diamond in the middle, with that little one in the bottom corner. That little one in the bottom corner refers to the zodiac sign, not the house. Okay, so we have the first constellation of Aries in the first house. Then to get to the second house, you count counterclockwise or up and to the left to get to the second house in this type of North Indian style chart, which is what I use in my work. Okay. So the 12th house is all the way in the upper right corner with the SA with the underline, that's Saturn. And the underline means it's retrograde, so Saturn's retrograde currently. Okay. Since today is August 1st. Why ninth house? So the ninth house is ruled by Jupiter. It's aspected by Jupiter. It's also aspected by Saturn. Right. And then the 12th house is also ruled by Jupiter, and Saturn is in it. So we're picking up these two houses like losses through, government potentially. The other thing is that there can be like what I say, like building, like how do I say, um, hold on just a second here. Yeah, like a building creative authority is what I wrote down. Sorry, I haven't seen this in a while, so I was looking at other charts today, so trying to get back to this. But Jupiter is basically an expansive planet, and Saturn represents things like tangible things like land and property. The Earth even can be. K2 is in the fifth house of creativity, and K2 is like the south node of the moon, so there's kind of unexpected, um, kind of sometimes separatist type energy going on there. But with K2, because it's got this hidden unexpected energy, but it's in Purva Falguni at the moment. Purva Falguni is related to, it's in the star of Venus, and the star Venus is a creative planet and a relationship planet. So the K2 has kind of a Venusian twist at the moment, and it's in Purva Falguni Nakshatra, which is symbolized by a hammock or marital bed. So it's about like, enjoyment, rest and relaxation, enjoyment, finer things of life, creativity. And so since K2 is an unexpected, energy, in Venus, the star of Venus, and in the fifth house, which is a creativity house, we're seeing some unexpected types of creativity going on here. Okay. And then we have the sun. The sun is related to president, king, or upper echelon, high level management. Okay? And the sun is also the ruler of the fifth house. So we've got a lot of energy based in the fifth house here. Okay. Sun happens to be in the fourth house, which is the house of home and family lineage or spiritual lineage, that sort of thing. And Sun happens to be in a nakshatra right now called Uccha, which is symbolized by a cow's udder. So, like the cow gives milk to its babies and to other orphan species like humans sometimes. And so there's this kind of nurturing, stabilizing, energy with that nakshatra Pusha. And we have Sun and Mercury both in Pusha right now. So there's this kind of, again, stabilizing, nurturing energy, both in family spiritual lineage, hence the theme for the month of protecting the lineage. Okay. And then we have this, again, we're picking up Sun and Ketu in the fifth house. So like this really unusual creativity, maybe involving technology or something else hidden. Because Ketu, again, has this kind of hidden type of quality, unusual type of quality to it. Um, yeah, so we're picking up authority, but we're also picking up loss as well, or even like the 12th house can also be not only losses and expenditures, but like foreign places, remote places, places overseas, trade, that sort of thing. Okay. Um, yeah, so we've got some separation, some losses, authority. Jupiter can also represent spirituality, especially since it owns and is aspecting the ninth house of spirituality. But Jupiter can also represent law. And it's aspecting the ninth house of authority, like government and um, legal, legal judgments and stuff like that. Okay. So, so again, there's some victory, but at a cost, and then involving these planetary energies. Then we have a different planet combinations called yogas. So we have a solar and lunar yoga here. That's the sun is supported by these two natural benefics, Jupiter and Venus, which are 12 houses away from the sun. That's going to be really nice. It's going to bring, renown and wealth and eloquence, that sort of thing. And then the solar yoga here is Mars in the 12th house from Moon. That's probably not as nice because Mars is a natural malefic. But still, at least there's some support. It's kind of like having no friends versus like maybe a friend that's like semi trustworthy. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not, that kind of thing. Especially with Mars, because Mars is around a planet, and it's kind of Mars has this energy of sort of being like the rebellious teenager. So sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not, right? So we also have a Buddha Ditya Yoga here, which is qualified. The Buddha Ditya Yoga indicates intelligence, especially like a calculating, like math science type of intelligence. That's Mercury and Sun together in the same house. Then we have Balarishta Yoga here, because we have 4 out of the 9 classic planets in negative houses: Venus, Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn. So what a Balarishta Yoga indicates is that, like, if this was a person's chart, it would indicate that they would probably have a troublesome uh, childhood. Maybe physically, medically, mentally, emotionally. Sometimes if the Balarishta is really strong, really severe, sometimes the child does not survive childhood. So we have a fragile beginning here. Okay. And Venus here is bhavam, so it's the second lord, and it's got 2 houses away. The second lord refers to family, inner circle, also speech and assets. So with the second lord going to away, you're getting like, one after the other. And Venus represents things like social grace. So it's probably like one person after another who's probably having some trouble or getting involved with some creative project. Also, there could be like one conversation after another that's in a bit of trouble here, I would say. Okay. The reason why is that Venus and Jupiter are both in a nakshatra called Ardra. Ardra is symbolized by a storm cloud. So it can be this like sudden, electric blow through, blow out like a hurricane type energy. So that's not like calm and peaceful and so there may be like, challenges here with communication. Like you might have to, seem like you're having the same conversation over and over again to clarify here. Because again, these 2 planets, Venus and Jupiter, even though they're both natural benefics, they're both in a negative house, the 3rd house. And they're in the storm cloud energy. Although, it's nice. I mean, the 3rd house does indicate like classical arts. So somebody might be creating something, very quickly, like sort of out of the blue. That's sort of surprising, like a storm, that rolls through fast. Or it might be, since it's an ardra, it might be related to electricity. Like Venus represents art, creativity, and Jupiter represents like publishing. So maybe some digital creative art or something like that. That could be going on here. Okay. So quite a bit of Venusian energy in a way, but stormy. So all this together. Oh, and that's the other thing is the Lugnatia for the chart. The Lugnatia is a ruling planet. So the Lugnatia ruling planet for both these charts is Mars, because Mars owns Aries, and Aries is in the ascendant or rising sign. Lugna, all different names for the same thing again. And Mars in both of these charts is gone as the sixth house. The sixth house represents arta, or material gains. So, Mars is looking to solidify material gains here. Okay. And Mars is actually like a very physical, planet. Even in and of itself, it symbolizes things like land and property. So, and the thing that was that even though the sixth house is Artastana, or house of wealth, the sixth house is also a bit troublesome because it's a negative house, and it indicates things like debts and acute problems, illnesses, accidents, and also enemies. And Mars represents enemies and accidents and illnesses. So there can be some stuff stirring up here, especially because Mars is aspected by Saturn, another natural prolific coming from the 12th house of losses. So there can be losses related to these things that Mars symbolizes: land, property, fights, arguments, that sort of thing. Okay. So the sixth house also represents like routine. So this could be with Mars and Saturn together. Mars is like a rebellious, erratic, but initiator planet. And Saturn is like endurance and longevity. So you get those together and you can get like an engineering type of like combination. So it's like engineering some new like daily routines or habits, it looks like here. And it might be related to authority as well, because Mars can represent leadership, sort of like Sun, but different. Sun is more like king or president. Mars is more like CEO or commander in chief of the army. Like somebody's going to roll up their sleeves and get involved in the nitty-gritty details, and rather than be like, oh, you guys handle it. Some people just sort of like, oh, you handle it, and other people handle it, but then they're still in charge. That's how it goes for some people, right? So, yeah, it looks like there's some plans or decisions here. Part of this restructuring of daily routines may be about trying to stabilize these losses through authority, right? This Saturn that's aspecting the ninth house of government authority, but it's in the 12th house of losses. And the Saturn is lord of the 10th house of employment, and also the 11th house of income and group society. So, Saturn's really dragging on employment and income and groups, these days. Like they just, that just came out, I think. For the United States, is that I think that just came out this morning, is that the unemployment rate in the United States is the highest it's been since the beginning of the pandemic. So, that's what's going on here anyway. So trying to establish some new plan to like kind of mitigate or ameliorate the losses that have happened through work, daily actions, and income, because again, Saturn is dragging those energies into the 12th house of losses and expenditures. Okay. This could even be because the 12th house is like overseas and trade and stuff like this. This could even be losses of jobs, 10th house stuff, and income, 11th house stuff, and groups to places overseas. So that might account for like what's going on in the United States, at least. So then the second chart here, August 31st, the moon is now in Jyesta. Jyesta nakshatra is symbolized by a talisman, so there's this energy of protection. Okay. So the moon is in the 8th house of deep psychology. Okay, whereas in the first chart, the moon is in the 7th house of winning at all costs, and 7th house of spouse-like partner, business partnerships, as well as way forward. So again, the first chart is a bit sort of more aggressive on the offense side, you would say. In the second chart, the moon is kind of aggressive on the defense side because of the J-sta position. Okay. So, and the moon is debilitated in Scorpio, where it is in the 8th house. So that's going to destabilize the moon. Also, the 8th house is related to long-term problems, chronic disease, death, bankruptcy, deep psychology, esoterica. So, so there's a lot of instability, I would say, like a protective stance mentally going on here in the second chart. Although moon is aspecting into its exaltation sign of Taurus in the second house, where it's nice. So this might be about speaking of, or thinking about, feeling, the emotional state of trying to protect family and inner circle loved ones, that sort of thing. Or like gains through like imagination, creativity, feeling, that sort of thing. Okay. And the dasha period, planetary period, so we're picking up more of this moon energy here. Mercury, moon, so those are the two mind planets. Moon is the emotional mind, Mercury is the logical, analytical mind. And then we've got Sun again, so on President, King, and then Mars, so Commander-in-Chief of the Army. So we've got the two mind, mental planets with the two leadership planets. So mind, mental, emotional leadership is what we're talking about at the end of the month. We've got another solar yoga. So we've lost one of the great benefics, but at least Venus is still on the 12th house from the sun. That should bring it up a bit, but now it's got Mars on the other side, which will bring it down a bit. It's kind of a mixed bag with the sun. The sun's going to be very exaggerated because it's in its own sign of Leo in the 5th house here. So it's going to be like, sun, as if the sun isn't strong enough, right? I mean, the sun is so strong unless you get some clouds or wind or water to balance it, like it'll create deserts, right? Because it's just so much heat, so much fire, and it creates dryness. So, the other thing is that we have a pravraja yoga here. So that's a life focus yoga because we have these three planets, Mercury, Sun, and Ketu in the 5th house of Leo. So we were already picking up the K2 energy, I mean, the 5th house energy with K2 Sun in the 1st house. But now it's like, whoo, like big focus here on the 5th house. 5th house matters. 5th house matters again. Children, counseling, education, teachers, creativity, stage, high level influencers, that sort of thing. We still have a Buddha Ditya yoga here, so there's still some intelligence. We also have a kahala yoga. That's because the lagnisha of Mars, or sorry, the dispositor, the landlord of Mars is Mercury, which is not particularly strong, but its dispositor, landlord Sun, is Swa. So we have sort of like these nested Russian dolls type of energy. So that's going to bring strength and more leadership to the chart. Then we have a Parvata 2 yoga here. Because we have only benefics in the Kendras, the 4 houses in the middle, and then also in the 8th house here. So again, more leadership. So again, it's like kind of leadership on steroids here, and maybe too much leadership, too much fire, frankly. Okay. We still have a Balarishta yoga for 4 planets and negative houses, so that's going to bring a fragile beginning. And instead of a bhavat bhavam Venus, now we have a bhavat bhavam Mercury. And while Venus was bhavat bhavam in an oral communication way in the first chart, Mercury is a bhavat bhavam planet for written communication. So there might be a lot of writing of strange, authoritative stuff going on here in the second month. Venus is still strong because it's got Digbala directional strength, so that's good because it's in the 4th house. But if you put this together, you would get something like, because again, we're picking up Mercury and Sun, which are both with Ketu, which is this hidden unexpected energy. So this might be like unusual sudden action or public notice, law, also regarding like spiritual leadership, potentially speech and decisions. Uh, yeah, because this Mercury and Sun are aspecting the 11th house. So we're picking up 5th house energy and 11th house energy. So income, clubs, group, society. Um, Potentially also gambling as well, because we have Rahu in the 11th house. 11th house can be gambling, like casinos. I kind of think of casinos. And Rahu is a planet of ambition. So, and Rahu is, this might be like, Rahu, though, is in a nakshatra called Purusha, which is symbolized by the front legs of a funeral pyre. So smoke and flames and things turning to ash, that sort of thing. But it's like this ambition in the 11th house, aspected by, again, Jupiter, Mercury, Sun. Jupiter and Mercury are the two education and media planets in the Sun. This could be like some super duper ambitious authority media campaign that really fizzles out, frankly, because the Rahu is in Purva. So it might be this big campaign, but it may not go very far, if anywhere. So that kind of stuff. It would just like come out of the blue. And the Jupiter aspecting there is going to bring usually either law, spiritual elements there besides publication. So again, there's more, publishing or amplification here. And Mercury is like speech and decisions. So, yeah. And then also with Mercury and Sun being on the Rahu Ketu axis, well, one, we're building up to eclipses here because when your Sun gets close to Ketu like that or Rahu, usually within 9 degrees, that's when you can tell, eclipse is coming or going, depending on if they're moving closer together or farther apart. But Sun in its own sign is Leo. Leo is a fixed fire sign. Fixed fire is like constant action. And then you've got Sun. So you've got constant action, and then you've got in this fire sign, you've got this fiery planet. And then on top of that, you've got Mercury and you've got K2. So Mercury's going to bring thinking, deciding, talking, and K2 is going to bring this unexpected sort of creative element to all this, and maybe technology as well. So this could be like a lot of just nonstop speaking or campaigning by some authority. But again, I'm not sure it's going to the mark. It looks like it might just sort of nosedive with public in the 11th house here. And the moon, again, we're picking up like, protection because it's in Jesta, protection, from a mental stance being in the 8th house, but also moon is lord of the 4th house of happiness, home, again, lineage as well. So in both of these charts, basically because of the Shah periods, what they have in common is we keep picking up planets in the 4th house. We keep picking up like protecting home, yeah, and lineage. So hence the theme for the month. So the other thing about this second chart, which is of note, is that Sun, K2, and Mars. Okay, because K2 is with its dispositor, landlord Sun. You can take 5 and 9 aspects of K2. So you're going to get K2 in the 1st house, besides the 5th house, and you're going to get K2 energy in the 9th house as well. And the thing is that Mars is aspecting those houses as well, the 9th house and the 1st house. And then you have Sun in the 5th house, okay? So basically, in these, all three, these Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are all fire signs. And you have at least 2 of these fiery, planets in each one. And usually when you get Mars and K2 together or Sun and K2 together, you get this like explosive, obsessive energy. Okay. So all these fire planets and fire signs and combined, things are going to be heating up. Besides the fact that we're coming up upon eclipses where things get just wild and wacky. Okay. So if you watch my monthly videos before, what I usually do is I talk about, now what I'm going to do is I want to talk about the different planets and in more depth so that you understand more of what they mean. But in between, what I do is I'm going to show you 3 famous birth charts of people, places, or moments in time to show you how, and the famous charts I'm going to show you are similar to the current sky pattern. So they will show you how these energies are embodied. So it's more than just sort of an abstract exercise, all this, that what I'm talking about. Okay? So far it's been abstract, but now we're getting into more of the grounding it into reality. So let's take a look. Okay, so on this slide we're talking about the two fire planets, Sun, Surya, and Mars, Mongol, in August. So August 2nd, Sun enters Ashwini nakshatra. The nakshatra symbolized by a snake. Okay, so what do snakes do? I mean, they run away, they hide sometimes, they bite things, they inject poison. Okay, so Sun, leader, authority, president. Sun also represents health. Um, it can represent career. Shlesha, what do snakes do? I mean, a lot of snakes, like, some people love snakes, a lot of people are afraid of snakes. Usually when you see a snake, most people don't just casually walk by. Some people do, but most people are like, oh, a snake. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's sort of the thing with snakes, right? Anyway, they catch your attention, but they're also mesmerizing, because usually, like, you're watching the snake to see where it's going to go, especially if it's poisonous, because you want it to go away from you, typically, right? So, so this is going to be, so snakes are like attention grabbing, attention seeking. Yeah. And so the sun is going to be in the Ashleisha energy. The snake energy can also symbolize things like healing and health, because like what do they call it, the staff of Mercury, where the two snakes kind of curl around each other. And that's a symbol of medicine because of this, shedding the skin and transformation, all this sort of thing. So this is either, can be say like a transformative time, but also like attention, grabbing time. And especially because the sun is about to go into Leo about 2 weeks after this, where it's going to be on fire because it's, powerful in its own sign, swan, its own sign. This is kind of the lead up. This is the lead up, essentially the first 2 weeks of August, the lead up to that. So, but Sun at this point in early August is still in Cancer, which is a friend sign. For the Sun, it's a movable water sign, so a lot of emotions going on here. And it's conjoined with Mercury, which is in Pusha, which is nice because Mercury, the Pusha again, is that cow's udder energy, so stabilizing, nourishing, nurturing. But the thing is, Ashlesha, the star of Ashlesha is Mercury. So Sun is with Mercury in Pusha, and then it's in the star of Mercury Pusha. So luckily, some of this, cow's stabilizing, milk giving energy is going to take some of the edge off of the Sun and Shlesha. Okay. But this could be like an unexpected action attempt to stabilize even. Okay, or attention, grabbing type of thing. So it could be a lot of, again, unexpected though energies coming, because if snakes usually don't know what they're going to do, right? Are they going to bite, his run away? You don't know. So then August 8th, Mars and Saturn have an exact mutual aspect. This might be a bit literally rocky. When you get Mars and Saturn together, you can get things like endurance, like even athletics, sports, military, engineering, land, property. Because Mars and Saturn are both very like tangible type planets. Mars is the initiator and the fire go-getter, the spark. But Saturn is the endurance, longevity, like see it through, like, stick to it type of energy. So when you get those two together, um, a lot can be accomplished. The thing though is that they're both astromalefic, so it might be too intense, too hardcore, not enough feelings sometimes. The other thing, Mars and Saturn are both in dual signs. Mars is going to be in a dual Earth sign, Virgo, and Saturn is going to be in a dual water sign, which is also interesting because right when Mars crossed into Virgo, there was that big earthquake in Russia, 8.8, big one, out in Russia that sent like tsunami warnings around the world, or at least in the Pacific. So, yeah. So, and it makes sense, right? Because Virgo is a dual Earth sign. So, literally, that could be like Earth splitting in two, especially because you have the two Earth planets, Earth symbolizing planets or land symbolizing planets, Mars and Saturn there. And then so Mars was the on land, version, and then Saturn in Pisces is like Pisces is dual water. So it's like the ocean splitting and the land splitting. There you go. Then August 13th, Mars enters Hasta Nakshatra. Hasta Nakshatra is symbolized by hand. So Mars is already like a, hands-on type of energy. It's, like even muscles and blood and stuff like that. Those are things that it symbolizes. And Hasta's hand, this is like taking control. I mean, like taking control. It might be establishing something new. It might be ending something. It might be erratic because Mars is erratic. And again, this could be splitting land or property or something like that. 16th of August, Sun enters Leo or Simha. Simultaneously, it's going to enter Maga. So, because it's changing constellations and nakshatras simultaneously, Sun is going to be gandanta. So, Sun is going to be unstable for a few days around this time. And all the things it symbolizes, like health and leadership, career, are going to be unstable for a while. Then it's going to join K2 and Leo, which again is, unusual, unexpected. So there's going to be a strong, unusual turn, but steady leadership. So it's going to be like firing like one thing after another, like, you know. And then once Sun enters Leo, again, K2 will aspect 5 and 9. So K2's not in its, unusual energy is not going to be contained to Leo at that point. It's going to be like in 3 out of 12 houses in the chart. So things are going to be kind of wacky, just because Sun is with K2 in its own sign, and Sun's going to be in Leo through I think September 16th, so a month. But then remember, we've also got eclipses, so going on, which brings also like sudden unexpected energy and twists and turns and stuff like that. So it's going to be even amplified because K2's aspects are 5 and 9 during this time. And again, affecting all the fire signs. So a lot of fires, like it literally could be like fires to put out. And then August 30th, Sun enters Purva Falguni Nakshatra. So I didn't mention Maga Nakshatra, which Sun's going to enter when it enters Leo. Maga is symbolized by a throne, but Maga is it's the heart of the lion of Leo, the star of Regulus. And in Indian culture, Maga is thought to be the place in the sky where our ancestors reside. So again, we keep picking up this past lineage energy. Besides the fact that I think it might be with the first eclipse. I don't remember if it's the first eclipse or the second eclipse, but basically Pitra Paksha is starting in the middle of all this, like in September. So Pitra Paksha is about a month long, where in Indian culture you honor your ancestors. So you see how there's various a lot of convergence around like honoring lineage and home and ancestors on various levels during this time. So yeah, it can get intense in that way. But once Sun enters Purva Falguni, again, that's some hammock energy. There's still going to be unusual leadership, but it's going to be more like in creativity or maybe performance or high level. This is all happening in Leo, and Leo is related to like high level places, like, not just like the town mayor or the state governor, but like the president, of the place or prime minister of the place. And Leo is also related to stages. And Purva Falguni potentially like creativity of some kind. So this might be like some, Sun, the fire sign with K2. I mean, that's going to be like rock and roll. That's some sort of rock and roll concert, whether it's literal or, just sort of energetically, kind of like that. But yeah, so you can see like, these planets, Sun and Mars, are not quiet and subdued, either one of them. And again, so it's going to amplify this really fiery time we're entering even more. Okay, so let's take a look at one of these famous charts I mentioned that's, replicates the current sky plan. So this chart is for Matahari, who was both a dancer and spy from the Netherlands. Her birthday was August 7th, 1876. Her birth charts states, or her birth record states, she was born 1 or 1300 p.m. in the afternoon in Leeuwarden, Netherlands. Yeah. So, yeah. So, yeah, she's got the Lugna nakshatras in Swati. Swati is symbolized by a new grown grass blowing in the wind. So it's a very fragile kind of energy, actually. And then, so usually with Swati, I see quite a bit of nervousness with people, which is interesting because she was an exotic dancer, So in some ways, she was quite out there. And then in some ways, I think she was quite fragile. Because this is not an easy chart by any means, and her life was not an easy life. So the sun nakshatra is in Ashwini, so some mesmerizing energy here, right? And the sun represents career. So she was an exotic dancer. Even though she was Dutch, what happened was I don't know if it was like replied to an ad. There was a Dutch man who was living in Indonesia and was sort of looking for a wife. And so she got married to the guy who lived in Indonesia. And then there were problems with the marriage, and she came back to Europe, and they got divorced eventually. And so she had to fend for herself. And so what she ended up doing was creating this whole persona, on stage persona, related to being some, uh, you know, like a Asian goddess or something like that. But basically, I think was doing like striptease essentially. But there was a whole, thing around it, like story or, persona around it. So, but anyway, she was mesmerizing. I mean, all these people try to copy her and her costumes and her exotic makeup and hair and all this sort of thing. Okay, and the sun represents the career. And the sun and the Mars, those they both have digbala in this chart, directional strength, because they're both in the 10th house of work and career and reputation. So she had an Ashlesha. When I see important placements with Ashlesha, with people, what I see is that they're often involved with drawing attention. Okay, so sometimes models, sometimes actresses or actors, that sort of thing, people in the public eye. The other thing I've mentioned is that when people have important placements in Ashlesha, they often can die, pass away in unusual ways. Like I almost kind of think of it as like snake bite medicine or dying by snake bite or something that's like, not a typical type of way to pass, accidents or, like like Whitney Houston, the famous singer. She had a couple of planets in Ashlesha, if I remember her chart correctly, and she died because she drowned in the bathroom in her hotel, like in the Middle East or something like that. So it's sort of like a strange, like way to pass, So I think that was the Ashlesha energy. It draws attention, and like you remember, like, oh yeah, that's the person who. Or there's another basketball player. He had Ashlesha placements, and he died in a helicopter crash. Just like not usual ways to go. And we'll talk about her passing on, which was not typical either. So, but let's keep going here. So, but there was she had a profession related to mesmerizing people that was quite strong. Okay. Then the moon nakshatras in Shatabisha. So the Shatabisha translates as 100 healers. With the moon in Shatabisha, this can be frankly, a lot of mental health issues. And she has Saturn there, strong in its own house, under retrograde, very strong Saturn. Saturn can bring anxiety, doubts, delays, skepticism, depression. So that with the moon is not, usually desirable for many people. And on top of that, you have Rahu, which is sandhi. It's in the last degree of Aquarius there. And Aquarius is a fixed air sign, so it's like fixed ideas. So this is going to be like she's probably somebody with mental health issues that was very difficult to heal. Rahu is there sandhi, so Rahu's unstable because it's in the first or last degree of a sign. And then Rahu is in Purva Bhadrapada, like it currently is now. Okay. So, and Rahu on its own brings like mental health issues and anxiety, confusion, illusion, delusion. So when you have Moon and Rahu and Saturn in these positions here in Shatabisham Purvabhadrapada, very hardcore mental health issues, I would say. And on top of that, she has another natural malefic Mars aspecting there. So, but the fifth house is also related to creativity in the stage. So Mars is a physical type of thing. Mars and Saturn together, construction engineering. Moon, imagination, drama. So so she was really good at like, generating these, unusual foreign, concepts into some sort of stage performance, physical stage performance. So that's all there. Yeah. So yeah, then the day lord is Moon. So picking up this, mental health, imagination issue going on here, and the Hara lord is Saturn, endurance. So um, there is still some endurance mentally she had here, but again, it looks like there was more mental instability than not. But we keep getting, here in the fifth house with these planets that she's running. Also, she not only has one pravraja life focus yoga, but she has two. So this fifth house of stage work and the 10th house of career and reputation. So that was like her big thing. And that's what she's known for, right? Being a dancer and a spy. Right. So then the Burjasha, Rahu, Moon, Rahu, again, picking up more of this fifth house energy stuff. And now Venus. So Venus is also, Moon and Venus together are the creativity planets. Also clothing. So, and Rahu is unusual, like ambition for unusual clothing or creativity, that sort of thing. And Venus is in the ninth house of authority and government. And Venus is the lord of the eighth house of scandals and secrets. So this is her, with Venus is like bringing scandals and secrets to the government. And that's kind of more the spy stuff. Although it was also probably the dancer stuff too, because the dancing helped her parlay and meet with some of these high level officials that she was hobnobbing with and also like gathering some intel from. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. So how does her, chart represent the current sky? Well, Venus is in Gemini and Punarvasu, or will be soon. Punarvasu is a nakshatra, like arrows being shot out and brought back to its quiver on the back. So there's this cycling or traveling type energy, especially because Venus also represents traveling and back and forth, especially because Venus is in Gemini, which is a dual air sign. So this is going back and forth between ideas, traveling between ideological worlds. As Venus, Venus is social grace, it's romance, it's sensuality, sexuality. Again, hobnobbing and potentially even, frankly, sleeping with some of these high level officials because Venus, the Lord of the eighth house. The eighth house is also sexuality. So, dancer is probably a bit of a soft term for what she actually was. She was a courtesan, which is basically a high level, prostitute. Yeah. And you can see that here in her chart. What else is similar to the current sky pattern? Sun and Mercury in Cancer, Shlesha. We've got that going on pretty soon. Rahu in Aquarius, specifically Purva Drapada, that's the same. And then Jupiter is going to go into Cancer pretty soon, where it's going to aspect the water signs like it does in this chart. And then I mentioned the unusual death. She died during Mars Saturn. So, period for her. So Mars again is this unusual, way potentially to pass. And what happened, and Mars is also debilitated here because it's in Cancer, and it's combust since it's so close to the sun. So actually, the way she died was she was tried by the French government and accused of spying for the Germans, and so she was shot. She was executed by firing squad in, I think, Paris. Um, yeah, at a fairly young age. I think she was only 41 when she passed. So this Mars and Sun, again, you have here Mars and Sun. Uh, you don't have Ketu 5-9 aspects, but you have Rahu 5-9 aspects. So you're still getting some of this hidden, unexpected energy, which is similar but slightly different from Ketu. But um, this debilitated Mars combust with Sun. It's in Cancer. Cancer relates to the chest area. And Mercury, Mars, and Sun, these planets in Ashleisha, are all aspecting the fourth house, which relates to the chest area. So this is her, and Mars is like fire and metal, potentially. So this is her basically getting shot in the chest, which is by firing squad, which is an unusual way for most people to go. So again, it keeps adding up. I mean, I've just seen so many like Ashleisha, charts that I'm like, oh, okay. I wonder how they passed. That's usually my first. I wonder how they passed, or how they attracted attention in their life, and then like how they passed, because they're usually, when you have Ashleisha placements, you usually get both of them. Okay, so let's go through house by house, see what we see. So the lugna here is Libra or Tula. It's a movable air sign, so a lot of ideas. It's aspected by this debilitated Mars and Ashleisha. So again, attracting attention through physicality. Okay. And Rahu is also aspecting here. So again, this hidden, unexpected quality in Purvadrapta. So this is like almost like I think that's what they called her, femme fatale. Like but Mars and Ashleisha and Rahu and Purvadrapta, these are natural malefics aspecting her first house. The first house represents physicality as well as personality. So there's some, again, hidden, seductive, snake-like energy she has in both her body and personality. And that's apparently how she moved and how she thought, it's like, how can she draw attention? And. So, but again, this is in Libra, so a lot of ideas. So very creative, a lot of ideas about how to make this work. And also Libra is related to the marketplace. So like this is a business for her. Yeah. Doing this, and it was. But again, with the Shleisha and the Purvada, like there's hidden destructive consequences related to all this, So it worked for her in the beginning, and that worked against her. Like it worked for her in the beginning especially because she was Dutch. Netherlands remained neutral during the war, so they could travel through Europe. And so she could travel through both societies, like the French society and the German society. So she was thought to, or to spy for both, or the French tried to get her to spy for her, for them, and then maybe the Germans did, and they tested her a bunch of times. And there's a lot of controversy, which is not surprising because, again, when you get a chart that's got Rahu 5-9 aspects or Ketu 5-9 or both, sometimes you get a lot of like strange, unexpected, hidden energy in somebody's chart, and you don't really know. It's hard to get to know the real them, or what the real truth is about them, in their lives. Um, so anyway, some people feel like she actually was, if she was a spy, it was a low-level spy. She didn't really provide that much for either government. So she actually kind of became a scapegoat because she was so famous. They're like, oh, we're going to make an example of her. And because she's so famous, people are going to notice, even get attention that way, get attention to, spying during the war, So yeah, she does have this Shasha Yoga, this really strong Saturn in the fifth house. So even though there's definitely some devious energy going on in the fifth house, like still, like that's actually probably her strongest house, frankly. Let me just check before I really commit to that idea. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. So Saturn, the Saturn actually gave her a lot, even though it's Saturn. But again, it's still Saturn. So there's going to be anxiety, doubts, delays, obstacles, chronic problems. And then she's got the two pravrajas, so power, that gives her power and focus basically on her career and her entertainment situation. Um, second house lord is the debilitated Mars, sandhi, Jupiter, so unstable Jupiter and Vishaka. And Jupiter represents speech, and this is the second house of oral communication, and it's aspected by this massive Saturn. So there are probably some speech delays going on. But also a lot of difficulties at home, I would say, like destruction of home. Uh, and apparently, what happened was it her? Must have been her. Yeah, her parents got divorced when she was young, and then her mother passed away, and then she ended up living with her godfather and then an uncle or something like that. So, yeah, not a stable childhood for her, and a lot of difficulties growing up. But also this Jupiter and Vishaka, this is like, victory at all costs and Jupiter speaking. So this is like, it almost seemed like somebody who's willing to say anything to meet her goals, whatever her goals were. Okay. But also she like lost her family. Um, and also I would say like, what would I say? Since Jupiter is the lord of the sixth house of enemies, it was also like speaking to enemies. That was like a gain for her, you know. But also maybe learning how to decipher, um, the speech of enemies and stuff like that. Yeah. So then third house lord is Jupiter. It's aspected by Venus. So again, the third house is the classical arts and Venus is there. So definitely a creative person. Um, and related to speech, and also the second house is like above the neck, so like the neck and the face. And so she was famous for her whole physique, but especially like her face and stuff like that, because of her haircut and makeup and all this, and her headdress and her whole costume and stuff like that. um so yeah, basically going back and forth, seductive dual acts, because Jupiter is there. So this is like a um dual fire sign. So it's a very physical, active, creative, going back. This is probably dancing to some degree, although the fifth house, I think, is also dancing. But I think this is more the like, the story and the persona and the whole like, you know, Asian goddess type thing, that she was bringing to her performance. She wasn't just pole dancing. She had a whole, it was like a whole thing, a mesmerizing thing that people were like, wow, with these like gold breastplates and things that she would wear. Um, yeah, so then the fourth house lord is Saturn, aspected by Swa, combust. Oh, and then Mercury and Mars are also at war here. Mercury is the analytical mind, and Mars is the action planet. So it's a war between mind and actions, kind of logic and just impulsivity. But the 10th house is like hidden underground places, and Mercury and Mars together. Again, you kind of get this. Mercury and Mars together, you can get it can be like a liar's combination, because Mars is thief and Mercury is speech and thought. So it's like a mental theft, which is a liar, right? So um, yeah. So again, this is like underground dealings, that she's having to work with here. Deceptive speech and actions, especially with leaders, military leaders. Yeah, because Mars, military sun, leadership, high level leadership. And the fifth house we've been talking about. So the Lord is Saturn, Moon and Shatabisha, Rahu, aspected by Mars. Again, performance, dance, strength, endurance. But also, I would say pretty destructive unyielding mental health issues here. Also, Saturn's with the moon, which is going to create a sati sati. So that's an indication of difficult childhood. And with all these planets aspecting the fifth house of children, it seemed like there was difficulty because most of these are not strong planets, and they're natural malefics. And like Mars is in Ashlesha, Rahu's in Purvadra, Moon's in Shatru. These are all these like negative health planet type combinations here. So it seemed like she probably had children, several children, but they were maybe quite sick or something like that. And apparently she did have two children. One died fairly young, and the other one lived to the age of 21, which is still young. And apparently they both suffered from complications of syphilis, that was related to their parents or something like that. So, yeah, you can see that here is like things that are, mental health issues that are difficult to heal. Yeah. So, probably some neuromuscular stuff as well, because Saturn's neuromuscular issues and Mars is muscles and Moon is mind. Rahu is like Mars and Rahu are like unusual infections like syphilis, right? So spirochete, bacterial infection. So yeah, so again, so not only again this fifth house was a challenge for children, but again also challenging for her work. I mean, her performances were very, even though she was famous for it and was, um, lauded for it in certain circumstances of her life or certain times of her life. At some point, it turned against her, and that's that kind of with this many natural malefics. Even though you have like one really strong natural malefic that's going to give something positive, with all these other natural malefics, it's like, ooh, this is pretty hardcore in the fifth house here. Yeah. So then the sixth house lord is Jupiter. It aspects his own house. So this is going to be her talking, victory, because the Jupiter's in that victory at all costs. This is her talking enemies. And it's in a dual sign with a dual planet. So it's like working both sides of the enemy line. Seventh house lord is debilitated Mars, and it's aspected by this massive Saturn where it's debilitated. This seventh house is like really, really challenged. I mean, I was like, wow, there's like hardly anything to soften this. And I was like, when I saw this, I was like, she must have like the worst of partners or something. I mean, it was like really bad. It's hard. I don't see it that bad very often, but I was like, wow. And it turns out her husband was an abusive alcoholic. So that doesn't surprise me with this turn. And then they broke up for a while and they got back together and then they broke up again. And there was a custody suit over the child that lived till she was 21. Yada, yada, yada. Anyway, it was like just a long, drawn out mess. Then the eighth house here, the eighth house lord is Venus. It's aspected by Jupiter. And, again, this made me think, because again, it's only natural benefics here. I don't think and the eighth house is deep psychology. Like the fifth house is intellect. So I don't think she was a very creative, imaginative person. Maybe a bit sort of devious in a way, and sort of calculating, like constructing the imagination and stuff like that. But her deep psychology is like Taurus, Venus is in Punarvasu, it's aspected by Jupiter. Her deep psychology didn't seem like, particularly pathological or something like that. I wasn't getting that she was like a, deep down sort of nasty, horrible person. I mean, I think she was sort of in survival mode and sort of, influenced in sort of, maybe strange ways by her experiences and stuff like that. And, may have been like, I don't know, sort of open minded, let's say. about how she survived in the world, but I don't know that she was like that. I don't know, maybe. It's hard to say. I guess I've just seen other charts where I was like, wow, this person is really somebody you want to watch out for. Her, I think she was just working her angles and that sort of thing. But, you know. So anyway, but I would say like optimism here about winning people over. I think there is some sort of confidence about her, like sort of being able to seduce people in this way with her personal or professional persona or whatever, you know. Then the ninth house here, the Lord is Mercury, which is an Ashleisha, so again, mesmerizing energy. Venus, it's also aspected by Rahu, so you're going to get ambition here. Um, the Lord, Venus is the Lord of the eighth house, so there's like hidden woman authority, bringing scandals and sex talk to the surface, going back and forth at both sides. So again, this is a spy stuff. Um, and then the 10th house Lord is Moon. We have Mercury, Mars, and Sun. They're aspected by Jupiter. Public victory and devious speech and actions. Also, I would say literally like government subcontractor. Who's the lord of the ninth house of government. It's gone to the 10th house. So she's, because I mean, her seventh house of independent business is toast. So she was sort of, how would I say, even though it might have seemed like she had a lot of independence and maybe she had creative independence, like she was completely dependent on these high level, dangerous, violent men. I mean, essentially maybe women too. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, who really had the power in that relationship? I mean, probably government authorities more than her. And at the end, that's what happened, right? She was expendable at the end of the day. I mean, they took care of her, unfortunately. So, yeah, then the 10th house. Okay, yeah, so controversial. And also, I would say potentially breaking the law. Yeah, because we have this sort of devious snake-like energy, potentially a liar's combination with law and Jupiter and law. So, yeah, uh, I don't know exactly how she was doing that, but that's possible here. Then the 11th house, Lord is Sun. There's a sandhi Keti there, no Trifalguni. So there's going to be, again, unusual, pleasures going on here in the 11th house of income, but also subscript society. And it's aspected by Saturn, aspected by Moon. So again, there's like more illusion, delusion, confusion, but also like pretty rowdy crowd, like dangerous, rowdy people, that she was rubbing elbows with. Also, hidden, high level seduction, work, groups, enjoyment with a purpose. That's, I think, on both levels, the spying, and then also the dancing part. Then the 12th house Lord is Mercury. It's hidden dual actions involving seduction again. Because again, she has three planets in Ashleisha. It's like that's a lot of snake-like energy for anybody to really deal with. So yeah, and so yeah, so she was a French, maybe slash German spy. Some people think she really was. Some people at this point don't. But was she a scapegoat at the end? Who knows? Because again, she has so much like hidden, mysterious, snake-like energy, Shatabisha energy, hard determined, Rahu energy. It's like that was probably part of her mystique was being so mysterious. So yeah. So anyway, that's her and how her chart represents the current sky pattern. Okay, so on this slide we have Mercury or Buddha and Venus Shukra transits for August. August 8th, Mercury leaves combustion or asta. So Mercury is currently combust because it's so close to the sun. So that means that Mercury energy is more internal, and then it's going to become more external at that point. So before this time, it's like more planning, decision making, internal communication, analyzing. But then it's like the communication decisions are going to be more external. People are going to be able to see the internal work that's been going on. Then August 11th, Mercury goes progressive after it's been retrograde for a while. So again, moving forward after reviewing, repairing things. Because Mercury was in Ashleisha, so it was kind of in this alert type mode, snake energy, attention, alert type mode. And now it's in Pusha, so it's kind of going back and getting more stable. And then, once it goes progressive, it's going to be in Shleisha again pretty soon at the end of the month. So, but it had some time, Mercury had some time to kind of repair things. Then 11th through 13th of August, Venus-Jupiter planetary war. Luckily there are two natural benefics, but still it's like, and also they're in Gemini, and Gemini, Mercury, the lord of Gemini, is in Pusha. So again, there's a planetary war, but there's like quite a bit of cushion here. So I don't think it's going to be a massive blowout war. That's just kind of not how it goes for these planets. The only thing, though, is that they're going to be in Ardra. So that's the kind of, edge. There might be a bit of an edge temporarily, and then they're going to shift to Punarvasu. So again, Ardra is a storm cloud energy. Nakshatra. Punarvasu is the arrows shooting back and forth energy. So both with the um, sharp kind of, well, electric is a storm, sharp is like the arrows, but the storm just kind of blows through and like, just sort of levels the whole place. Purvasu is more of a contained cycling back and forth, kind of going on. But Venus and Jupiter are the two counseling planets as well. So Venus is a worldly counselor, Jupiter is a spiritual counselor. So this may be trying to work out what's the best way to integrate spiritual and practical spirituality in a practical way, or the practical aspects of spirituality, or the spiritual aspects of the practical ways of doing things, like trying to integrate them, giving them both space, and there might be some confusion regarding how to approach things or what advice to take. Yeah, like I've been involved with this. Oh my God, it seems like a non-stop, non-ending negotiation. It's been almost all summer. And it's like, because Jupiter went into Ardra early of June, so was gonna be in Ardra for like 2 months, and like thank goodness, or like sort of at the tail end, about 12 more days of this. But I was like, man, Jupiter. And Jupiter's a great benefic, so it could have been much worse, But I'm just like, even Jupiter in like Ardra is like making my head spin, frankly. And I've had to go back and forth negotiating all these things. Like I was like, wow. I was like, I was hoping for a peaceful summer. It could be worse, but it felt kind of draining, frankly. So anyway, this is wrapping up. Luckily this planetary war, in Ardra is going to wrap things up and move into at least probably a more settling energy with Punarvasu. It's a little bit more contained in a way. It's not so like anything goes, with these storms blowing through. But there can be some confusion. The other thing is Venus and Jupiter in Ardra and Gemini, because again, Gemini is a dual air sign, so mixed ideas or multiple ideas. This could be brainstorming, inspired brainstorming, like getting the inspirational hits from Jupiter, the intuitive hits from Jupiter. But then it's like, how are we going to like make all these like creative downloads work in the real world, So it's like, let's get the ideas, and then now moving on to how to implement them, that kind of thing. Then August 12th, Venus enters Purnarvasu Nakshatra, again, that arrow cycling energy. So traveling, creative arts, involving any kind of rotation. So, like, actually, it's funny, the woman who cuts my hair, she has placements in Purnarvasu, and she has Venus in Purnarvasu specifically. And so that's what she does, right? I mean, she has her scissors, she has it in the little jar with the antiseptic stuff. And then, she takes it out, she cuts hair, and she puts it back. Like somebody, I mean, a scissors is not quite an arrow, but it's got a sharp point, an edge, and it can cut things like an arrow can. And it cycles into this jar of antiseptic. So I was like, oh, that's kind of funny to think about it that way, but that's how it goes. So then the 20th of August, Venus enters Cancer, karaka. So this is an enemy sign for Venus. So Venus is not super happy here. But there's sort of a similar vibe because Venus and Cancer are both very emotional. So it can be quite an emotional time, towards the end of the month. And Cancer's the movable water sign, so quite a bit of emotions. And this might be like moving from like romantic ideals and Gemini, Venus and Gemini, to Venus and Cancer, to feelings. And this might also be Venus and Cancer is like even like making your home beautiful, kind of thing, because Cancer is related to home, beautifying the home, that sort of thing. Then August 21st, Mercury enters Ashleisha. So Mercury's going to that snake-like place. So Mercury represents words and decisions. So this can be like sudden, unexpected words, decisions, alerts, and it could be like words that sting, decisions that sting. Then August 23rd, Venus enters Pusha Nakshatra. So this is going to be a very nurturing, stabilizing energy for Venus for a while. Nurturing relationships, like Venus symbolizes pets, comfort food, heart feelings like warm and squishy, lovey-dovey type energy. Yeah, maybe self-care as well. Yeah, it could be. August 30th, Mercury enters Leo somehow with Maga and Maga. So again, Mercury's joining the Sun Ketu party in Leo, which again is like that really rock and roll type energy. And so the thing is, with Mercury going through Maga, again, Maga symbolized by a throne and also, the ancestral place. This is going to be like the mind choosing to, kind of honor ancestors and lineage, but also like priming oneself for authority, like a leadership position. Because this Mercury in Maga is going to be with this super strong sun, which is a leadership planet with Ketu. Like this might be an unusual, strong, like thought leader that kind of emerges or gets attention. Thinking of or considering speaking of predecessors. Um, and then also, like, again, just the mental stance of being a leader, like stepping into leadership and maybe in a public way, because it's all in Leo's stage. And then again, the Paksha, honoring the ancestors month. It's starting with the first eclipse on September 7th. I didn't remember if it was the first or second. So it was the first eclipse on. So again, just all this like ancestral lineage type energy coming through this month in various ways. Kind of interesting. Okay, so on this slide, another famous chart. This is a chart for when the Berlin Wall was constructed. And again, this chart, has a similar sky pattern to the current sky pattern. So, what can we learn from this? Like in terms of how these energies, the current planetary placements, like how can they manifest, in our world? So, the Berlin Wall was constructed. Big beginning of it was August 13th, 1961, starting at 15 minutes, midnight 15 minutes of that day. So right after midnight in Berlin, Germany. Okay. So we have here, you can see we have a Gemini Lugna, Mithuna Lugna, Gemini rising chart. We have at the top diamond, the little 3 in the bottom corner represents the third constellation of zodiac, which is Gemini or Mithuna, okay, which is a dual air sign, mixed ideas, mixed ideologies, contrasting ideologies, which is the background for the reason why the Berlin Wall was constructed. Okay, the reason why it was constructed is because there was this major brain drain from East Germany to West Germany, and it was too easy for East Germans to just walk on over to West, or East Berliners to go walk over to West Berlin, and leave the country and drain their intellectual crowd source, human resources and that sort of thing. So that's background here, because that's the rising sign, so that sets the tone. Okay, so the Lagna Nakshatra is in Mrigashirsha, right at the top here. Mrigashirsha is symbolized by a deer's head. So you can think of deer walking through the forest. There's a seeking, searching energy here. Okay. So why seeking, searching? Well, we'll get into that. So the Sun Nakshatra is in Ashlesha. So Sun, President, King, authority, government, Ashlesha, shocking actions here. Okay. This blew people away. They couldn't believe this was going on. Okay, just like showed up, like literally, people showed up like right after midnight and like, uh, just like built this whole wall basically in a day, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, and so we'll talk about it. But the Moon Nakshatra Maga, again, leadership, but also lineage. Okay. The day lord was Saturn. Okay. Saturn super strong again. Saturn's in its own sign, retrograde down here in the 8th house. The 8th house represents chronic problems, death, disease, endings, bankruptcy, and Saturn here as a planet represents chronic illness, death, obstacles, delays, okay? And so this 8th house with this massive Saturn is in Uttarashada, this piercing victory of losses and like physical in a way, because Saturn also represents land and property. Okay. And Jupiter is there as well. So it's like this physical law, physical barrier to prevent losses here, potentially. The only thing, though, is Jupiter is retrograde as well. It's also an Uttarashada, but Jupiter is debilitated in Cancer here, or not Cancer, Capricorn here. So Saturn's massive. It's going to completely overshadow this Jupiter. And Jupiter's not very strong, and it's in the negative house. And Jupiter is lord of the 7th house of partnerships and way forward, and then the 10th house of employment. So this is like trying to stop all this drainage, although it might be. It's in the end, I think it worked against East Germany. Frankly, I actually happened to. I actually went to Berlin before the wall came down. It came down in 1989. And we took a bus across Checkpoint Charlie, which was the American checkpoint there. And it was literally like going from the west side to the east side. It was going from like Technicolor, all these shops and, all the colors. And then you go onto the east side and it was like black and white. And there was still like all these like destroyed buildings from like the wars and stuff like that. I mean, from like decades ago. I mean, it was just like, it was like you were walking into like you thought it was like a movie set, because it was such a strange, like literally you crossed the checkpoint and it was like a different universe. It was shocking. And apparently, like since it was communist, yeah, I guess, well, it's incorporated now, but um, when the wall came down, there was a lot of talk about like, well, how are these East Germans gonna fare in this free market economy in West Germany, trying to integrate them and stuff like that, because they're not used to going out and hustling to get a job and that sort of thing. And um, they're not used to so much choice, all these things, because again, there's a whole generation that grew up with this wall around. Anyway, I saw it in person. It was pretty like phenomenal. It was shocking just to visit for a day, let alone like see it show up in my backyard, like these Berliners. So the day lord is Saturn, this massive Saturn. The hora lord is Mercury. Mercury's in Ashlesha. So again, communication, snake-like communication, like alert, like, hey, shocking, sudden communication, you know, uh, with the sun here. So sudden, shocking communication of the government. And the thing is, you can see there's a parivarshan exchange of houses between sun and moon here. So actually, you can swap them both. So sun is coming back into Leo with Rahu, which is not Ketu. I mean, again, it's going to be with Ketu soon, but Rahu and Ketu are quite similar. But basically, sun is still going to be on the Rahu Ketu axis. And the thing is, right in the middle of this, because this is 13th of August, this Berlin Wall was constructed in between eclipses. There were eclipses in 1961 on August 11th and August 26th. So you can see, you see what I'm saying now, okay? There's a lot of similar. Okay, I'll talk more about. Well, I guess I'll do it. Should I do it now? Why not? I'm already there. Okay, so Mercury's in Ashlesha, Sun's in Ashlesha, Rahu is in Maga again. Rahu and Moon are both in Maga. So ambition towards lineage and ancestors, keeping things, traditional. Um, Venus is in what is it? Venus is in Gemini, and Venus is in Ardra, that storm cloud energy. Venus represents people. It represents like practical advice. It also represents transportation. Okay, and Mrigashirsha is a searching energy. So this 15 a.m. time, this is when the Germans were bringing the supplies to the wall, like the barbed wire and all that, to the streets, like looking for the supplies. They were setting it all up, and then they were just went gangbusters and like built this whole thing in a day. It's pretty wild. Yeah. So, and then the thing is, since Sun is in the second house here of oral communication, this is like a government alert, like this is happening. But then with the swap between Sun and Moon, you bring Moon as public into the second house of oral communication, but the third house of written and non-verbal communication. So this is not only a verbal warning, but it was a physical warning and communication that like we're not letting our people, immigrate so easily and drain our economy of all these like, well-educated, high level um, type of minds, leaving us on the lurch here as a whole country. Okay. So then so the Mercury again is logical mind, decisions, communications, plan. Like this is a shocking idea, blowing people away. The other thing is this Moon, which is the Lord of the second house going to the third. This is like one communication, oral communication of the other. This is the grapevine. This is people on the streets like running to their neighbors and their friends. I mean, like, oh my God, can you believe this is actually happening? Like, this thing is going up, like, right in front of our eyes. And then, so the birth dasha, K2, Mercury, Saturn, Venus. So again, picking up this Saturn energy in the 8th house, just like it's all about building this wall. And the other thing is that, like, literally, like, property law, but again, not the wisest action, frankly. But it is what it is. K2 here is in the 9th house of government authority. So again, unusual, and what's K2? And K2 is in Banishta. Some unusual rhythm, or because Danishta is symbolized by a drum. So it's like some unusual, even military too, some unusual military government operation. And the sun and moon are aspecting here. So some unusual military action to govern public in a shocking way. And then we got K2, Mercury, Saturn, Venus, and again, separating military separating travelers. Yeah. Okay. So the current sky pattern: Venus, I said, Gemini, Ardra, Mercury, Rahu, K2 on the Leo Aquarius axis. Mars is in Virgo, so it just slipped into Virgo like it currently is, and then we've got eclipses going on. So I'll go through most of the houses, not all of them, because I actually wanted to talk about the timeline for the day, because I thought that was like really cool, actually, in terms of the astrology. The Lugna here, again, Gemini, Mithuna, dual air sign, mixed, contrasting ideas. Venus is here in Ardra. Again, Ardra is a storm cloud, so sad people, like sudden storm of practical advice. But Ardra again, is the electricity as well. Like I mentioned my oh no, I didn't mention her. I mentioned Venus and Punarvasi. But Venus and Ardra is like some sort of digital creative, event or something like that, or activity. But Venus can also represent transportation, so electric transportation. So also, what happened these days was they stopped the subways, they stopped the streetcars, they, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So seeking sudden contrasting ideology, electric vehicles, travel storm advice. So this is like a travel storm warning almost. But it was actually the government that cut off, that was the storm. It wasn't like a weather storm, it was a political storm. shocking. This ardra is going to be shocking. Ardra, that term could also bring sadness. So it's like and ardra represents psychology as well. So this could be like just blowing people's minds away with this, what was going on, And then the sun moon parivartana, again, you're going to bring this sun moon energy all over the chart. So again, governing people. Government is sun and people, public is moon. So the second and third houses I kind of talked about already. So you have a new, basically eclipsed moon in Maga, ancestor energy, throne energy, sun with a Swa, Mercury, and a Shalatia. So luckily, again, there's some strength here because Mercury, well, it's all kind of let me go back here. This massive Saturn is influencing Mercury and Sun. So they're dominated by this massive Saturn. Mercury is also in a star of Saturn, and then Sun is in a star of Mercury. So you can see they're all kind of nested together. Basically, this is not good news because this massive Saturn on Mercury and Sun, like maybe if Jupiter was not in debilitated in the 8th house, but if Jupiter was with Mercury and Sun, this might be like good news. But this is not good, happy news going on here. The second house, sudden shocking public leadership announcement. Then the third house, Sun, bhavat, bhavam, moon, again, the second lord going 2 houses away, and Rahu and Maga. Shocking, ambitious government action, corralling the public, travel through, and then information going through the grapevine. The fourth house lord is Mercury, so again, a Shlesha energy, alert energy at home. Mars is here in Uttara Falguni. It's aspected by a debilitated Jupiter. Uttara Shada. So unwise legal division of land, but successful nonetheless. But also, and this might sound a bit twisted, but since Mars is in Uttara Falguni, there's enjoyment related to that nakshatra as well as the goal. And Mars represents like action, muscle, military. So unfortunately, it does seem like the military enjoyed doing this. And, so to each his own, I guess. But yeah. Then the fifth house lord is Venus, which again is an Ardra. It's aspected by this massive Saturn, and this massive Saturn is exalted in Libra in the 5th house. So this is massive, strong advice to just shut down transportation, which is what they did. And it was successful. So just literally just cut it all off with a big barbed wire fence and concrete pillars and things like that. So then the 8th house here, 8th house lord, I mentioned is like Swa retrograde Saturn with debilitated Jupiter, aspected by Sun, Moon, and Mercury. So this is very controversial. And again, Saturn is not only lord of this 8th house, but it's lord of this the 8th house or the 9th house of government authority. So Saturn, the lord of the 9th house, has gone 12 away. This is going to be losses to the government. I think this is supposed to be a stoppage of losses to the government and society, East Germany, East Berlin. But in the long term, I think it worked against them essentially. Like it just dug them a deeper, darker hole because it was sort of like this weird time cap. Like I said, when I crossed into East Berlin, I mean, it was like this. You just felt like you were like 50 years behind. Like you were walking around in the middle of a black and white movie or something. It was very strange. Yeah, so the 9th house here, Saturn, Ketu, and Danish aspect of Sun, governing the public through unusual physical military means. Then the 10th house lord is Jupiter, which is again in a negative house, debilitated, even though it's retrograde. There's some success here, but the 10th house is ruled by Pisces, which is a dual water sign. So, and Mars is aspecting here and Saturn as well. So there's some successful construction of land between waters. So I'm guessing there was like a river there, maybe in Berlin. I don't remember that. I don't remember Berlin geography very well. Or if there's maybe a river that divides East and West Germany or something like that. But there was some successful construction there. So the timeline of the day, so this I thought was really interesting, based on the Lugna Nakshatra. So Again, on average, a lugna, a rising sign, lasts about 2 hours. So you have 12 different signs or constellations, and if each lasts 2 hours, you get 12 by 2 hours. That's like 24 hours in a day. So on average, right? So what I did was I found this article like where they went like giving kind of the timeline for the day and how this all rolled out. And it clearly was a storm. I mean, I was so impressed. I was like, wow, I had no idea that they just like built this whole thing in a day. I thought it was like, years or, whatever, like most walls and, public standing works are done. But like, yeah, it was sort of impressive that this was accomplished the way it was. So anyway, what I have here at the bottom of the slide in the corner, bottom right corner, is the timeline of the day. So the time, what was going on during that time, and then the nakshatra that was in the rising sign. Because again, each nakshatra has a different energy. So just see how this lines up. I mean, this is pretty amazing. So we have, okay, so this particular chart was at 15 minutes after midnight. This is when they're gathering supplies in the streets. So again, the Mrigashirsha deer searching and seeking energy. They're getting everything lined up. Okay. Then 1 o'clock, they cut off the street lights. By that time, the Lugna Nakshatra was Ardra, electricity, boom, electric storm out. Okay. Then 1:30 a.m., they stopped all public transits. So the subways and the whatever they had, the streetcars, and I don't know what else they had going on there. They stopped all that, okay? At that point, the Lugna Nakshatra is Punarvasu, which again is that cycling, commuting energy of the arrows. Okay. Then by 2:02 a.m., the Russian tanks surrounded the city, and the German troops were at Brandenburg Gate. So again, you have like, uh, surrounding the military sharp points, surrounding and going back and forth, Punarvasu energy around the city. Then at sunrise, they said by sunrise, which was 4:44 a.m. in Berlin that day. Already by sunrise, okay, so it hasn't even been 5 hours yet. It's like 4.5 hours. 27 miles of barbed wire had been set up. I mean, that just like blew my mind. I was like, no wonder why these people were just like, what the hell is going on? It's crazy. And they were already jackhammering the earth, the soil to put in the concrete pillars for. So not only did they just put up this like chicken wire, for the day, they were already like putting in the foundational pillars to make this thing a permanent, concrete wall. So I was like, wow. So when that happened at sunrise, the 27 miles barbed wire was an ashlasha, shocking, sudden. And then the barbed wire, like it has, like the sharp points, like fangs of a snake. It can like bite you if you jump on that, right? Like if you jump on a snake. I was like, wow, like this is so literal. I was like, wow, this is like blowing me away. And then at sunset, 19:37 p.m., the wall was complete. So not even a whole day, like less than 20 hours. They did their thing. They came in, they stormed in, they just stopped traffic, stopped electricity, set up 27 miles of wall with barbed wire and some concrete pillars or whatever, and life changed for everybody. Like, and so the sunset time, the nakshatra at that point was Danashta, which again is a drum related to like rhythms and military operations and stuff like that. So I was like, wow. I mean, I was like, wow, this chart was just like too much. But anyway, so hopefully, again, hopefully we don't get another wall constructed here. But I think you can see how some of these energies, especially the planets that are in similar placements and stuff, might play out in sort of similar ways in the upcoming months. Okay, so a few more planets here. So we have Jupiter, Guru, Saturn, Shani, and Rahu, Ketu. So the slow-moving planets on the slide. Some of this I've already talked about. I think most of it I have. August 8th, there's Saturn and Mars have an exact mutual aspect, so that can bring some maybe literal rock and roll. 11th through 13th of August, there's a Jupiter-Venus planetary war. You can see the previous slides for this. Then August 12th, Jupiter enters Punarvasu. So again, getting out of that storm cloud energy. It's like, there's still this back and forth, but not so storming, hopefully. So, and less sad, maybe some more grounded direction or action taking place. And the other thing about Jupiter and Punarvasu, the star of Punarvasu is Jupiter. So Jupiter is going to be swa through its star, and so this might be, again, Jupiter is a spiritual planet, so this might be like maybe considering, because we're still in Gemini for most of Punarvasu, considering new cycles of spiritual actions or activities or things like that, Yeah, so Jupiter is going to be like a really strong Jupiter. And then August 16th through September 16th, while the sun is in Leo, K2 is going to have the 5-9 aspect. So you're going to get more of that K2 energy all over the chart. More unexpected actions, heated because it's going to be with either sun or K2 in fire signs. And this can be literal fires and explosions, like of various types, and maybe simultaneously. So it might get a little bit rough that way. Then on this slide, we have the moon. I always do separate videos on the full moon and new moon, so to get into a lot deeper detail about it. But August 9th, there's a full moon or Purnima that's happening Capricorn, Makara, and Shravana. Shravana is another nakshatra related to like lineage. Shravana is all about like oral traditions and stuff like that. So the moon, again, imagination, emotions and stuff like that, and arts. It could be somebody getting involved in some sort of oral tradition of some kind. Okay. Capricorn's a neutral sign for the moon. It's a movable earth, so it's building something tangible here. And then it's aspected by Mercury in Pusha. So there's some supporting element of the mind, because the two mind planets are going to basically be in Capricorn with this full moon. So it's like supporting, like I almost thought of like steeping the mind in some sort of oral tradition. Then August 23rd, a new moon on Amavasya in Leo, Simha Maga. So boom, new energy, new cycle in that, again, high level stage, ancestral leadership energy. This is a friend sign to the moon. It's a fixed fire sign, so a lot of action, continuous action. Conjoined with K2 and Purva Falguni so some strange, unusual things going on here, unpredictable, but maybe enjoyable, maybe creative. But I would see, because sun's going to be there, so sudden moves and leadership, maybe in the direction of ancestral tradition. That might be the unusual thing. It's like, oh, suddenly somebody's interested in researching their family background or picking up some art that their grandmother did, after their grandmother passed or something like that. The other thing that's unusual is that both the full moon and the new moon are in lugnas of Gemini. So that last chart I did of the Berlin Wall was a Gemini lugna. And so, again, we might be seeing that, in terms of like mixed ideas, kind of, because the full moon in Capricorn, that's the 8th house. That's a deep psychology. And then the 5th house, or not the 5th, the Leo house for Gemini is the 3rd house of creativity. So again, creativity and, the moon, imagination, oral tradition, maga, like, there's something kind of weaving together here with, kind of unusual new directions, maybe in these ways. And then again, in Gemini all month, Jupiter and Venus are going to be either in Ardor or in Punarvasu. So again, planning, decisions, practical spiritual insight, psychology, brainstorming, that sort of thing. So yeah, it would be interesting. We'll see. Okay, so last famous chart here before we end the video. So this is chart number 3, Burning of Washington, meaning burning of Washington, D.C., capital of the United States. This is during the War of 1812. So when did this happen? Well, August 24th, 1814. And this chart is set for 21:06 p.m. in Washington, D.C., USA. The reason why this time is based, comes from a diary of John McElroy, who was a U.S. priest who lived in D.C. at the time. And he noted at this specific time that the Capitol building was being burned down. The Capitol building was housing the Congress, so the assemblymen, senators, and assemblymen, and also the Supreme Court, and then the Library of Congress, so the National Library, that sort of thing. And so it was burning. He noted it was burning at this 21:06 p.m. time. So we can see this chart is actually like the beginning and end of the month charts I showed early on in the video, where we have an Aries rising or Mesha Lugna here. So, again, this might be, again, like partially collective energy, embodying partially collective energy. But when I was saying, again, I literally just picked up this chart. Was it this morning? It was either this morning or last night. Because I do all the planets first, and then I find, I research charts, you know, uh, that look like the sky patterns or whatever. I do that as last, and I write the notes, and then I talk about it, blah, 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 do the recording. But, so this, because it's an Aries rising, you can compare this apple with the August 1st chart apple, and then also the August 31st chart apple, and see how this plays out. And hopefully it doesn't play out, but it might. But you can see there's a lot of similarities in this chart as well. You have Sun in Leo. Mars was there. It's moved on to Virgo now, and Jupiter's there. But you have Ketu aspects from the ninth house. So actually, in the fifth house, you have Sun, Mars, and Ketu, three fiery explosive planets in a fixed fire sign in the fifth house. And K2 is aspecting the Lugna again, so it's going to be unusual type of actions going on here. All right, so let's see this. Let's talk about this chart, and then we'll see how things play out during the month of August. So the Lugna nakshatra here is Ashwini. Ashwini is symbolized by the Kumara twins. They are celestial healers, and they ride around on horses, or they have horse heads. So they're sort of like this. I always think of like Three Musketeers, like riding in on their horses and swashbuckling and saving the day for some reason. So there's this rescuing energy here, okay, which makes sense since we're talking about the burning of Washington. So there's some sort of, and again, this was this priest living in D.C. at the time energy. So part of this is going to also reflect him and his mentality and all this kind of stuff. Okay. So the Sun Nakshatra is in Maga, again, leadership, government leadership. Very strong here in the fifth house of creativity and advisement. The Moon Nakshatra is in Mula. So Mula is symbolized by a bunch of roots tied together, and the deity associated with Mula is Kali, the goddess of destruction. And Mula represents the public, and it's over here in the ninth house of government authority. So this is, and it's aspected by Jupiter, which is again law. Moon is public, and Ketu's there in Uttarashada, so unusual. Again, victory here, sudden victory. And Jupiter is aspecting its own sign, which is a dual fire sign here. So, so this is a government legal place here. Not only the government itself, but the building. And it's a dual fire sign here. And it happens to be that the Capitol building, which is being burned at this particular time, 21:06, has two wings to it. So I thought that was like pretty cool, actually, like tight in terms of the astrology. Okay. There's some unusual, sudden, sharp victory here. Okay. Then let's see, Mula. But again, this could be like just a destructive mind. Also, obsessive mind with this K2 moon. I mentioned moon or Mercury, especially on the Rahu K2 axis, can be like impulsive, compulsive, blah, blah, blah type energy. The day lord is Mercury. Mercury's here in, let me just make sure. Nashaya. It's a nashaya, so there's some alert going on here in the fourth house of home and also lineage, right? And then the Hora Lord is Moon, which is the lord of the fourth house here, which is again home and family lineage. So again, we have this unusual destruction of governments and public buildings as well as homes. Although, luckily, saving grace here in this fourth house, because Mercury is in Ashleisha, so there's some alert. Moon is in Mula. That's not looking great. But Venus is here in Pusha. Remember I told you Venus is going to be in Pusha later this month, and that's the kind of, nesting and nurturing, beautifying the home type energy. So what is nice about this is a very intense chart, and we'll get more into it, and you'll see how intense it gets. But I just thought this Venus seemed out of place to some extent, well, to a large extent, because it was the only sort of soft spot in this whole chart. But Venus in Pusha in this fourth house is going to protect fourth house issues like home, happiness, lineage, and Venus also has Digbala here, okay, directional strength. So there's some protection here to the destruction going on here. And the one nice thing about the burning of Washington is actually the British who came in and raided Washington, D.C., they burnt public buildings, but they didn't burn like private residences. And they didn't attack anybody who was unarmed. So, sort of the regular citizens and their homes and stuff like that. I mean, they could have burned it all down, but they were just, specifically targeting public government buildings and I guess military or trying to stop them or whatever. So even though this is bad, it could have been much worse. Yeah. So, and again, Venus will be in Pusha, so protecting some of these things, as Sun transits Leo at the end of the month, right? And it's going to be with K2, so. Yeah, so, and Mercury again, alert, and Moon and Mula. This is not steady mind here, okay? Not, Moon and Mula, that's a very destructive emotions, and Mercury, sudden unexpected thoughts. And, but this Venus and Pusha, it's stabilizing. Excuse me. And that I think that's also this priest, again, this priest energy here, the guy who wrote this diary, because Venus, this Pusha Venus is the lord of the second house of family, inner circle, but also speech. So I'm guessing here that as his role as a priest, he's trying to bring some sort of calm to this huge disturbing incident that was just, all these British soldiers rushed in and started burning, major public government buildings and stuff like that. So the birth show is K2 Mars. So again, this K2 in the ninth house, unusual, sudden victory here, government. Mars is, with this massive sun, and they're both in Magal. So very fiery military government. And again, this is all happening at a high level. Leo on stage. Stage is Washington D.C. But again, they're also picking like the Capitol building. I heard they took because the Capitol building was like big, especially at this time. This is just after the United States became its own independent country. They didn't have these. They didn't have like the White House like it is today. Actually, they developed the White House after they burned the White House down, which was the president's house. That was totally gone, and they actually the one that you see on TV and in the news these days that was built after this as a reconstruction project for the city, for the capital. So we've got this K2 energy, Mars energy, so unusual military action, and Jupiter, so again, law. And are all of them? You can see that this Jupiter, K2, Mars. So in the first house, you get Jupiter and K2 together. In the fifth house, you get Mars and Jupiter together. And in the ninth house, you get K2 and Jupiter together. So you can see we're lighting up all these fire signs as if they needed more fire because you have K2 in all three, and you have Mars in one, and Jupiter in the other. So this one is going to be more political because of Jupiter's involvement in these fire signs. Um, but the current situation, it might be literally like more fires as well. Because this was like a fire, like it was a physical fire, but it was based on politics, as opposed to like maybe like a forest fire or a chemical plant fire or something like that. It might be happening around us soon. So, how is this chart similar to the current sky pattern? Well, Venus and Mercury in Cancer, Sun, Mars, K2 in Leo. Um, Mars was just in Leo recently, left in the last few days. K2 is 5-9 aspects on all the fire signs again. Saturn is in, did I say? Oh, Saturn is not in Pisces, but Saturn is aspecting Pisces. So we have Saturnian energy in Pisces, which again is the 12th house of loss in expenditures in overseas places. And you can see that this Mars is aspecting the 12th house as well as Saturn. So this can be like a destruction of land overseas, which is what happened. So the reason why this happened, this burning of Washington by the British, is that this happened in 1814. So the War of 1812, basically, how did it go? So Britain was at war with France, and then it was at war with the United States as well. And because its resources were tapped out, it couldn't really do much with the United States. But then I think, what was it, Napoleon got captured or something, so then the British could focus on the United States situation, North America situation, all of a sudden. And in the year before, in 1813, the United States attacked York, which is today, it's now Toronto, Canada. But the United States attacked York 3 times in 1813. And apparently they really demolished it, like, more than they needed to, or pretty cavalier about it. And so the British were basically just retaliating for the Americans, leveling or destroying a lot of Toronto or then York. Um, so yeah, and then you could hear in the notes, like, of the history of the day, that they had 2 major leaders, and one wanted to just like blow it all out, and the other one was like, well, let's have a little restraint here. So that's why they didn't harm, civilians and their private property. They just wanted to make a statement, which is what they did here. And then, basically strong arm the government, put the screws to them essentially, but not the, day to day citizens. So again, could have been much worse. So let's go through some of these houses here, see what we see. Let me just get a drink of water. Talking too much as usual. So, the Aries at the top, Amesha rising, movable fire sign, a lot of action, which clearly, if they're burning the city down, capitals of a country down, there's a lot of action. And literal fires. And then it's aspected by Jupiter, which is in Purva Falguni. So there is also some, enjoyment here. These guys are having fun, which is, it is what it is. I guess that's why they're in the military. Maybe they enjoy that. So the K2 is an Uttarashad, a sudden, unexpected political victory here, which they took over the capital for 26 hours. And they said in the notes that they did not have the intention of taking over the capital permanently. They just wanted to, like, show it's some forceful action to keep it in line going forward, I think. So sudden, unusual victory, probably lawless as well. And the reason why lawless, again, it could have been worse. They could have burned down, some people's homes or whatever. But this K2 with Jupiter, this is going to be unusual law, unusual twisting of law. And so I said there was something probably not totally on the up and up here. And so as I was reading about it, apparently this whole incident was very harshly criticized by a lot of European leaders, because even the burning down of like government buildings and stuff was not done in that day. It was more of like a, political. It was more of a political battle rather than like a physical. Let's just raise, burn down physically the capital, because again, it's that can escalate things. It's like, oh well, you did that. Well, we're gonna do you an even bigger. Burn down even more of your, whatever towns or something like that. It can just escalate things, I guess. But so it was not something that was done during that day, was to burn down political buildings and stuff like that. Um, Even though again they showed some restraints with not harming citizens. So yeah, we're seeing that here again because the Jupiter K2 is happening because you see Jupiter is aspecting Aries, fire signs Aries. It's in Leo, and it's aspecting Sagittarius, and K2 is aspecting this as well. So you keep getting this Jupiter K2 combination, and you're running the birth dasha of Jupiter K2. So this is like some unusual political military move here. Um, yeah, it went farther than it usually goes. Okay. So then the second house lord is Venus. Venus is in Pusha. So again, maybe speaking calmly to close loved ones while their minds are agitated, because again, Mercury's in Ashlesha and Moon is in Mula. Like the mind is like flipping out. The third house lord is Mercury. Rahu's there in Punarvasu, is aspected by Moon. So Rahu's ambition, third house is neighbor. Ambitious neighbor with destructive mind on public, has on the mind destroying public, property, essentially. Fourth house lord is Moon. There's big bala Venus, a strong Venus, Mercury and Shlisha, offering calm during some sort of alert. Destruction of home, history, lineage again, and again, this home is near a water boundary because that's Cancer, and again, Washington D.C. is close to the Atlantic Ocean, just a few miles in. So, then the fifth house lord is a Swa sun, massive sun, combust Mars. So again, that's also nice that Mars is combust. Mars is like a military and aggression and stuff like that. Mars is combust, so you can't see it. So even though they burned down all these, again, this could have been worse. Like if Mars had been non-combust, you probably they would have like turned the whole thing to ashes, this whole town. And then we have a karako bhava nasha Jupiter, so that's going to bring problems to the fifth house, especially children. So this is disturbing to children, but again, also the legacy here. I think again more on the political scale. Like what was it? I think I was reading too, which kind of blew me away. Because I think was it Trump, the current U.S. president, recently in the not too distant past, like sort of threatening to invade Canada or something. Um, and the prime minister, I think it was Trudeau at the time, because I don't think the new PM was in Canada, but I think the then prime minister of Canada was just like, "Oh, why are you even talking about invading Canada?" And then apparently Trump brought up this point of, well, you guys, burned down Washington D.C. back in 1814. So you see how this can go and escalate and like just hang on, you know what I mean? Like through generations. It's like most people don't even know that this happened anymore. But he's using it as like some sort of, justification point or something. It's kind of fun. Anyway, it's not like let's learn from our mistakes. It's like, well, remember what you did to us. It's kind of funny. Anyway, so the fifth house, yeah. So there's some, again, there's some destruction of lineage here, and again, political lineage. I think. Then the sixth house lord is Mercury, again, alert at home and, alerting people to their daily actions and how they have to maneuver through here. Then the seventh house lord is Venus. It's aspected, exalted. It's aspected by Swa, exalted Saturn, and it's no Swa retrograde Saturn that's exalted in Libra. I mean, this is like a you know um, I would say, end of comfort or end of like partnership here. It's a pretty strong end of partnership. Because Saturn is an Uttarashada, so it's like, yeah, like ending the comfort of your partners, that sort of thing. Eighth house lord is Mars. It aspects its own house, so it's gonna be strong. Again, Mars is a fiery, rebellious leadership planet in Scorpio in the eighth house. It's very transformative, strong transformation. And again, this is the deep psychology, so strong transformational physical mindset here, like let's show them a lesson. Um, and also, like, again, a hidden scandal here. This is an unexpected, uh, takeover of Washington, D.C. In the ninth house lord is Jupiter. It aspects its own, so there's some protection here. Moon is Ketu. And again, but bilateral enjoyment, destruction of public legal authority. So again, the capital has two wings. The 10th house here, Lord is Saturn, Swa, retrograde, Uttarashada, sudden piercing victory, aspected by Venus and Mercury. So success in destroying the comfort of home and like kind of the building, the nest, like, stopping employment, groups, because again, Saturn is the Lord of the 10th house of day-to-day activities, reputation, also the 11th house of income, clubs. It's like just, what do they call it? Like putting somebody down a peg or pulling somebody down a peg or two. It's like just, you gotta knock this off. It's like, that's what they're doing here. The 11th house says the Lord is Saturn, it's aspect by Sun, Mars, Jupiter. In leadership, uh, Jupiter, destroying society and income here. Basically, they had in Wikipedia like the number, like the dollar amounts lost, and it was tremendous. I mean, just imagine if they had like ripped down people's houses too. I mean, it was a lot. And then the 12th house lord is Jupiter, which we know is already challenged, aspected by Mars and Saturn. So in success overseas with loss of property in terms of this whole effort here, campaign here. So so the properties that were destroyed: the White House, the Capitol, which housed Congress, the library, and Supreme Court, the Navy Yard, the Treasury, the Department of War. So yeah, I mean, it was not like some little, you know, whatever kitchen fire going on here. And again, this is the British retaliating for U.S. attack of York 3 times the previous year, which is again at Toronto, Canada. And the thing that was also interesting is that there were only 4,500 British soldiers involved in this, and they took it over like immediately. Um, the thing that really helped, well, some say it helped, some say it didn't, it made things worse, was that about 4 days later, there was this massive thunderstorm that came through, and all the rain helped to put out the fires that were still going on. Although some people say that the water damage was like made things worse, but at least the fire stopped. And Congress was kind of off. You know, a lot of the Congress was off in private residences for about a week, and then they regathered and they voted. And they voted not to relocate, because some people are saying we should relocate the capital, and the Congress voted not to relocate the capital. And so, since a lot of the buildings were burned down, the only place they could meet that was big enough for the Congress was the post office. So they met in the post office until December 1815, until they got a new building. Um, yeah, so interesting stuff. So again, this chart's different from the first charts I showed you, because this one is much more of a Jupiter K2 mix, and the other charts were more K2, Sun, Mars, so probably more literal fires and more military, as opposed to like sort of political conflagrations, that sort of thing. Okay, so there you go. As always, thanks so much for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. I appreciate all your support for my work in the channel. So yeah, all my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. For more famous birth charts, check out my birth chart archive list 2025 video, where I list all the famous charts of people, places, and moments in time that I've analyzed on the channel and the videos you can find them in. I do offer individual birth chart readings. If that's interesting to you, you can email heartlightastroai.com for more info on that. I have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I talk about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, as well as yoga, so other Vedic arts, homeopathy, naturopathic medicine. And the name of that channel is Nature Source Care, so that's out there too for you. All right, so as always, thanks so much for stopping by. And I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so take good care. Namaste.